of the living God, have mercy on me, sinner. Excuse me. Well, again, welcome everyone as we continue to make our way through the book Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. As you may recall from last week, we're in the section that began on page 107 called The Enemy, the Extraordinary. And it's in this section that is based on Matthew 5:43 through 48 that we begin to use the word here, the love, and speak specifically about love. Um, Bonhoeffer has mentioned that it's been, it's an underpinning of everything that has come before, but now Jesus is specific and, not in love for your neighbor or your friends or your family, but precisely and uniquely in love of your enemy. Um, I don't know if there were any questions or comments about that, what we had done so far. Well, like I said, we'll begin on page 110 and work our way through the rest of this section tonight. Um, so if there are no initial thoughts, comments, questions, we'll go ahead and continue. Um, so on that the first full paragraph on page 110 begins with quote unquote bless those who curse you, um and if we as followers of Christ lift our hands to bless them, uh we are effectively saying your curse cannot harm us, but may your poverty be filled with the riches of God by the blessing of God against whom you rail in vain. We shall willingly bear your curse if only God's blessing comes over you. Now, I know we touched on this last week. And so Bonhoeffer is, pointing toward a kind of a radical reordering of things. Again, but well, maybe not again just yet, but really claiming the power of love. That is the power of love and the power of love given through blessing that is protective. The curse, the evil can't really harm us. And in some ways, for Bonhoeffer, and then indeed for many others throughout the life of the church, the early martyrs all the way through more the more modern martyrs, more recent martyrs, is that there is a power in love that doesn't necessarily save anyone or the practitioner of love from abuse or pain or neglect or mistreatment or um, betrayal or any of that. Um, but what the love does do is prevents the person who is loving, who is doing the loving, from becoming like the object of their love. So oftentimes persecution, mistreatment has a corrosive effect on its victim, and such that the victim, even unwittingly and looked for, becomes to act in similar ways, begins to act in similar ways, or begins to do things that are uncharacteristic, that would replace love with some kind of retribution or a lesser facsimile of the love that God talks about in Jesus. And so the act of loving helps to prevent that, prevents that deterioration, that corrosion, that whittling away of the power of God that we have in love. And so doing good involves all the things of life. So our loving doesn't just stop it and say, "Oh, well, I love you," but our loving continues with, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink, as Paul says in Romans 12 and 20. So it's not simply an intellectual exercise of love. It's a an active love though, where not stating it. I don't think it's taking it too far that we're doing the same things for the enemy, real or perceived, that we would do for the people that we love, that love us back. We be consistent in the love that we show, not showing favoritism to the people that like us or that we know, but being consistent in the love that comes from God. That is not on our own power, not because of our particular gifts, but is love that comes from God because we wish to follow Jesus closely. Um, uh, at the bottom of page 110, Jesus does not promise us that the enemy we love, we bless, to whom we do good, will not abuse and persecute us. They will do so. But even in doing so, they cannot harm and conquer us if we take this last step, uh, if we take this last step to them in intercessory prayer. So, so it's not that, this is protective, in terms of, being some kind of armor or other defensive mechanism that would stave off the abuse and the persecution, um, but ultimately keeps our soul secure. And our soul is the important piece. It's that soul, that spirit that makes the closest connection with God, and therefore, we want to keep that as healthy. We don't want that damaged by either what we do or by what other people do to us. Um, uh, Bonhoeffer begins to talk about love that is unconquerable. Um, and so love is made unconquerable here in the first full paragraph on 111, when he asks, well, how does love become unconquerable? Unconquerable. He says, by never asking what the enemy is doing to it, and only asking what Jesus has done. So it's kind of a question of perspective and focus. And, you know, meditative practices, primarily in the East, but we have some of it filtered into the West. Even some of the current neuroscience in pain management says that, that oftentimes the focus on the injury, on the pain, makes it worse. And then it kind of becomes all consuming. So, to the extent that someone is experiencing pain, especially chronic pain, but acute pain, whatever the pain is, to the sense that we can change our focus from that to something else. So, meditative practice would give us an object to think about. So Christian meditation would be, a piece of scripture, an icon, a particular piece of music or chorus or line from that music, and whatever the case that we could focus on that would help us not to focus on the pain and the injury. And likewise, Bonhoeffer is saying here, we're not focusing on what the evil person or the enemy is doing to us. We're focusing on what Jesus has already done. And again, as Bonhoeffer has said through this whole chapter, especially, but even the whole book thus far, is that the singular focus that we have as disciples is Jesus. So when we're in the midst of persecution, being mistreated, called names, whatever the situation is, rather than focusing so much of our energy on the person that uh, is persecuting us and what they're doing to us, we focus on what Jesus has done and the fact that even from the cross, Jesus was forgiving. Even from the cross, he was concerned about others. Even from the cross, he was able to, at least in one of the gospel accounts, to make a way for a hardened criminal to be with him in paradise, having answered his call and his plea. So our focus shifts from, okay, wait a minute. this person did this person did that, this person is always doing that, this group of people doesn't like me, whatever the case is, and moving to more of a sense of what has Jesus done in a similar situation? Or what is Jesus asking me to do in this situation that would further the gospel and would ultimately deepen our relationship with Jesus and our dependence on Jesus alone. And so that's how love becomes unconquerable. Love becomes unconquerable because the focus, even in the midst of persecution, is on that symbol, that person, that being of love that God has sent. Ultimately, to die, but to show us how powerful that love is. That love is stronger than death, as the Song of Songs says. Um, and so it's this unconquerable love that is it's not our love per se, but it is the love of Christ, the love of Jesus Christ, that was made real and evident to us in Jesus' willingness to be sacrificed, willingness to go to the cross. Um, and so there's a change that happens to us that helps us to even see our enemy as a sibling, even see our enemy as one that's created in God's image and likeness. That gives us, the ability to want the best for them, just as we want the best for the people that we know and love and that know and love us. We also ultimately want the best even for our enemy, because there's some understanding, some belief that once that person, that enemy, um, has a similar experience of God as we have, is overwhelmed by God's love, God's presence, God's peace, um, then, then they will begin to walk as we walk. They will maybe even will come to us and say, "Hey, I want to know more about this Jesus that you talk about, this Jesus that helps you not to respond to me as ugly as I've been to you. This Jesus that keeps you excited and joyful even in the midst of all that you're struggling with. I want to know more about this faith that you have that seems to make a difference for you." Um, these are the kinds of things that we hope, maybe we don't always see, maybe we never see with some individuals, but we hope is making an impression on them, such that they can begin to see as we see and become to be as we are, hopelessly and completely devoted to Jesus, and accepting of that great love that God has for us. So I'll pause there for a second, see if there are any questions or comments before we move on to page 112. And so one of the things that Bonhoeffer mentions, as support for us being, um, or for us working at loving our neighbors or loving our enemies as even as God loves us, is that we know, and scriptures tell us that God causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust alike. It's not that, oh, the good people, the holy people, the people that believe are reaping the benefits of the created order of nature, and then those that aren't, they can't, plant any crops or they don't have any rain or anything like that. Um, uh, God is saying to us in that way that I continue to bless and care for even those people that reject me, or don't know who I am, or are basically ignorant of the story of the gospel. Um, that
Before you move on, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
It says, how does love become unconquerable?
Hmm.
By never asking what the enemy is doing to it, and
Hmm.
only asking what Jesus has done.
Right. Hmm.
Is that applicable to this day and age?
Well, I mean, it's it really is kind of the only thing that has ever really overcome evil in a way that has provided a greater good. Because you look at, nonviolent social change, with whether it was King and civil rights or Gandhi in India, and you look at some of the other uh, liberation movements, Romero and others. Um, it is that thing that keeps it from escalating tit for tat. Now you've done this to me, so now I have to get back at you, which is what we see, in war. Um, and so, ultimately, Bonhoeffer, following Jesus, is trying to short circuit that cycle. Um, yeah, now I think probably behind your question is, something about the naivete of this, or is it really ultimately effective? I think that it is, but what ultimately it requires is that it's not an individual pursuit. So like, you know, I can't solely rely on what I do as an individual to have an impact because, if that's the case, then, they take care of me and then, well, okay, well, then what do we do? Or they take care of a handful of us. But really, what Bonhoeffer is suggesting is this is a corporate, all believers are doing this, the sheer weight and enormity of a movement like this would be overwhelming. But when it's isolated, a couple few people here, this small group over here, this small group over there, then without a huge miracle, yeah, it probably is doomed to fail. Um, I mean, you see in the training that, that the protesters used in the civil rights movement, that there was no retaliation. You didn't even you didn't even respond to the hatred. You didn't shy away, but you also didn't engage. And many in the country and the world were saying this is stupid. It's foolhardy. You can get your head bashed in. Malcolm X and the Black Muslims were saying the same thing as well as some of the other more militant groups. This is insane. You're just gonna let them beat on you, just gonna let them turn fire hoses on you, sick dogs on you, all of these sorts of things. But because the movement had a different vision and a greater
This
goal.
is not from individual and individual.
Right.
This is more less corporate.
Right. Right. And that's the only way it's going to work. Yeah. I mean, you have to have a good number of people that buy into this. Because yeah, it's not gonna matter, make a hill of beans, if it's just, a handful of people or a couple of people as individuals doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Which does, then beg the question, of course, well, how can you be assured that the people around you, even those that said they sign up and they support it, are going to be there when you need them? Or how do we navigate the injuries that will be sustained, physical and spiritual? And those are questions that are always asked when evil rears its head, and we're trying to figure out what the Christian response is. Um, and it's not
From
easy.
1950 point of view.
I'm sorry.
From 1950 point of view,
Hmm.
not from a today 2026 point of view.
Yeah, maybe, maybe not. I mean, I think I mean, we could debate, I guess if we wanted to, which was worse. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know if that would necessarily help, but it does stand to reckon that if we are committed to the gospel, then our response has to be categorically different. It can't be we can't engage in the same stuff that the enemy is. We can't um and and in a couple of pages actually Bonhoeffer will kind of deal with that a little
Mhm.
bit, not to completely satisfactorily answer that question, but to put a finer point on the expectation, or at least the goal of Christianity, of Christian
What
action.
he's
Yes. Uh-huh.
what he's trying to say at the point is that of sincere love, we should be fond of all our enemies unsymp- unsympathetically.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
How do we work that out?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know.
Surely
It's
we are to serve and help.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's but that
The unhypocritically is kind of caught me here.
yeah, yeah. I mean
I
I
really
don't
don't know how I could address that. That's I'm reading fast there.
yeah. I mean because if but again, if it's just you, just me as individuals doing it, then it ends with us, whether, if it's that we, are physically taken out, or mentally or spiritually broken, that ends it unless there is a group of people committed to this kind of living. And most recently, I guess we saw it in the civil rights movement here in this country. We've seen it in other freedom movements, around the world since then, and even before then. But it takes, a critical mass of people. And it also, to a certain extent, takes the conversion of some people that are outside of the presenting society or issue, that now looking on and seeing the actions of these people, whether it's being willing to be beat upon, spit upon at lunch counters in the South, or have fire hoses and dogs turned on them and not retaliate, or and then there are those of goodwill on the outside that say, wait a minute, this can't happen. And then they begin to bring pressure on the powers that be. And then you see some change happening, from within the institution or the society that is causing uh, much of the mayhem. Now you have pressure, not only from the people on the outside, but also from the inside. And then you might get some change. Now, is it long lived? Well, we're sitting here now, dealing with the repercussions of that, of the rearing of the head of racism, bigotry, and all of those things that civil rights at least sought to quell and to improve. So now, to Miss Gaskin's point, that was the 50s, 60s, and parts of the
Yeah.
70s. Okay, great. Now we're in the 2020s. Does that still work? Um,
How would you tolerate Black Lives Matters?
yeah, yep. I mean, I think that Bonhoeffer would be, would agree with it as long as it wasn't, um, how should I say, uh, a, a, there wasn't aggressive retaliation. I'll put it that way. Um, Even though, we see as Bonhoeffer progressed, that there was some understanding or realization that, okay, the tactics are going to have to switch up a little bit because evil's about to win. Now, you could make an argument that, Bonhoeffer lost his way, And to a certain
Yeah.
extent, he kind of wrestles with that, kind of says that in some ways. Um, but yeah, but you really we really do have to, kind of make a decision. Okay, we believe in the gospel. We're following the model of Jesus, and therefore, these are the things that we can do. These are the things that we won't do. And it's all in the hands of God anyway. And so as long as we stay true to those convictions, then we trust that things are going to be all right, even if they end up not being good
Mm-hmm.
for us. You know, maybe the fruit is born for a generation after or two generations after. If you think of folks in slavery who are enslaved, many generations, hundreds of years, um, and all of the things that happened in between, from your Nat Turners to your Denmark Veseys to your other quiet, non unwritten about folks that were doing things behind the scenes, to your Harriet Tubmans, and so you had a whole wide range of things that we just don't know when we're in the middle of it, trying to do the best we can, what the outcome's going to be. We just don't know. And and so on some level, we are, as believers at least, are saying, okay, we don't know what the end's going to be. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to continue to try to do what we are given to do based on the model and the example of Jesus. And ultimately, in the midst of it all, God's will be done, and we trust that the good that God has intended will come to pass. So it's kind of pie in the sky, and maybe sounds really naive, but it is part of the legacy of our belief. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Is that Miss Brereton? I see you're
Yes,
unmuted. Yes, ma'am.
yes. I was thinking and wondering in today's society, how would Bonhoeffer relate to the relationship, say, between our mayor right now and the president of Israel and the Jewish people of this country?
Mm,
The back.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, Bonhoeffer was, in the midst of, I mean, he was, you look at him, he probably looked a lot like Hitler's perfect person. He was fully German, had all of those attributes. Um, but he chose not to go that route. And I don't, in terms of, kind of trying to take him and his thought process and put him here, that's, I don't know. I mean, I think on some level, for Bonhoeffer, the stakes were so high and it was so clear, in a way that maybe isn't always as clear, that this was the bad and this was the good. And anything associated with the Third Reich, German, Nazism was completely bad. And so, you had to go the other way. So anything that looked like it, smelled like it, had any inkling or or bend that way was, to be rejected. So I think, on some level, he probably, I don't know, would be against you know, the genocide, would be against the
Mm.
the outright evil treatment of the Palestinians, um, and would probably shun the
Opinion.
rhetoric of the kind of the most the most vote
Mm.
the strongest Zionists. I would imagine, but hmm. Yes, ma'am.
That's my opinion.
Ms. Curtis?
He would have sent him to the Hague.
Mm. Yeah, well,
He would not have hesitated.
yeah, right. Well, yeah.
There was too much went down here.
Mm, yeah.
Unspeakable things happened here.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. Um, and Bonhoeffer goes on to say here in the middle of 112, he kind of gets to the meat of it, where he says, the time is coming in which everyone who confesses the living God will become, for the sake of that confession, not only an object of hatred and fury, indeed, already we are nearly that far along now. The time is coming when Christians, for the sake of their confession, will be excluded from human society, as it is called, hounded from place to place, subjected to physical attack, abused, and under some circumstances even killed. The time of widespread persecution of Christians is coming, and this is actually the real meaning of all the movements and struggles of our time. Those opponents intent upon destroying the Christian church and Christian faith cannot live together with us because they see in all of our words and all of our actions that their own words and deeds are condemned, even if ours are not directed against them. So Bonhoeffer, I mean, he states it in no uncertain terms here that, is truly believes that this is, if not the epic battle between good and evil, that this is a major conflagration that will cause and call Christians uh, to brave some really difficult things. As you said, being shunned, being cast out of society. And we hear about this, as Jesus talks about it. Um, and so, again, for Bonhoeffer, the stakes were the ultimate. What there was no ability to see out of this in any other way but direct confrontation. Um, and and since that was Bonhoeffer's feeling, and that's kind of what it looked like at the time, um, as Germany gained in power, as the Blitzkrieg and various other tactics of Nazis of the Nazi German of the German army were being successful over and over again, and how the recruitment of the Axis powers and their abilities and victories on different theaters during World War II, it really did seem, that they were going to win. And so Bonhoeffer is saying, the time is coming, and frankly, he says is already here. That that if you are a Christian, if you are truly a believer and truly following Christ, these things are going to happen to you. Some people are going to get killed, subject to physical attack, hounded from place to place, abused. All of these things are going to happen if you, as a Christian, decide to stand up against the evils that are there. And then of course, in his case, Nazi Germany. In other cases, the American government for various reasons. Today, in terms of, immigration and then just the kind of general assault on democratic norms uh, and expectations in a, in a system in a country that is to be governed by a particular checks and balances within the government, those things. You know, um, the challenges might look different, but the evil intent behind them, is consistent. And so, Bonhoeffer is asking, is I think many of us are asking now, what do you do? What can we effectively do to push back the onslaught? And I think, we've talked about it before in different ways. Um, ultimately what we can do is care for one another and not succumb to the temptation to demonize and to, and only to protect ourselves or our particular group, but to be willing to, to give support, to stand with, to protect to the extent that we can those that are most vulnerable, to speak out in the ways that we have ability against some of the overreach that we see, some of the evil things that we have seen done in the name of, our particular government, or in the name of, protecting the homeland, or whatever the rhetoric might be. And that's really all we've ever had is to follow the model that Jesus followed or gave us, the model Jesus lived, and live out, the days that we have, in service to that goal of following Jesus. Um, and obviously, as Bonhoeffer says, we count the cost, and it is costly, but we are doing it. Not really even so much to see results, as ridiculous as that sounds. We're doing it because we're compelled to by the love of Christ. And that's a lot different than we're doing it to win, or we're doing it because we want to see the change, in our particular lifetime or in our particular sphere of influence. It really is, our goal is beyond, simply, seeing, the battles won, or beyond simply, seeing, this regime, get stopped. It really is, we're doing this for the love of Christ, and ultimately helping to usher in this fundamentally different understanding of interaction in the world, vis-a-vis God, all of these things, the created environment, all of these things, kind of a reordering of that relationship. And that probably, is gonna take more than the time that most of us have. Um, but that doesn't stop us from doing the work that we can do right now. Uh, the fear of that persecution ought not deter us from still doing the loving thing, still doing the supportive thing, still doing the protective thing. Um, Bonhoeffer even goes on to say, the time is approaching when we no longer as isolated individuals, but together as congregations. This is part of the point I was kind of trying to make. As the church shall lift our hands in prayer. Now, this is not just simply, kind of the euphemism, thoughts and prayers. This is, committed prayer that is not simply, saying words to God, but it's coupled with concrete action, that makes a difference, however small it might be, within the situations that we find ourselves in, our interactions with one another. Um, and so, it is a prayer of most intimate love for those who are lost, who stand around us and glare at us with eyes rolling with hatred, some of whom have already even conspired to kill us. It is prayer which will penetrate deeply into their souls and will tug at their hearts with a much stronger grip than they can manage to tug at our hearts, despite their strongest efforts to hate. Yes, the church, which is truly waiting for its Lord, which really grasps the signs of the time of final separation, such church must fling itself into this prayer of love, using all of the powers of its soul and the total powers of its holy life. So again, this isn't simply individuals, this is whole groups, whole congregations, he's saying, um, that that it's necessary for us to throw ourselves wholesale into this, because ultimately Bonhoeffer saying, well, what else, what other choice do we have? Again, for Bonhoeffer, it's very clear: either you capitulate and go along with what Nazi Germany is doing and follow Hitler, or you stand against that. There's really no gray area, because the gray area, again, for Bonhoeffer, to go all the way back to the beginning, is this cheap grace. The gray area is what he has seen his beloved Lutheran Church already do to kind of curry favor from the regime. And Bonhoeffer is saying that can't work. Ultimately, it's similar to Jesus saying, you're either hot or you're cold. If you're lukewarm, I'm spit you from my mouth. There's we Bonhoeffer might say the time for half measures is over. It's either you're gonna do it or you're not. And if you don't, you're in league with the evil, and you deal with those consequences, both in the present and also in the future to come, uh, when Jesus comes again and everything is made right. Um, or you make a decision that you're going to stand against that evil, and it might not work out really well in the meantime, in the present, in the near term, but your soul will be secure, and you will know, or have a reasonable assurance that come what may, all will be well for you, and all will be well for that community that you're with that is committed to this. Um, and so it's a choice of, I mean, you're rolling the dice one way or the other. You're rolling the dice with kind of the worldly, I'll bide my time, and then when this is over, I'll still be okay, and then I can, make amends after the fact. Or you're saying I can't abide by this at all in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to stand against it at the great cost that it might be to me. But I also am going to do that not out of some great desire to be considered, a good person or hero, or not out of, um, even that, it's going to get me into heaven, or, but out of the love that I have for Jesus and what Jesus has shown me and done for me, by virtue of his life, death, resurrection, and ascension. Um, oh, it's almost 10 till. One thing that I want to get to, is this idea of the extraordinary. And that really, as Christians, we're signing on to do the extraordinary thing. So, at the bottom of 113, you know, the kind of love is self-evident, regular, natural, but not distinctly Christian when we love our friends and family and those that love us. Love of enemies is distinctly Christian, is extraordinary. It doesn't make logical sense. And yet we are asked to do it because it is extraordinary. It is um, supernatural, even. And so that as the Christian, we're really going for the extraordinary, the peculiar, those things that aren't self-evident, that are irregular. What Christian depends on, uh, what is Christian depends on the extraordinary. This is why Christians cannot conform to the world, because their concern is the extraordinary, or this per, perison, perison. This thing that is beyond the natural, the normal, the even the comprehensible. That is what Christianity is about. It's not about going along to get along. It's not about even navigating the systems so much as it is. We are going beyond what is there. We're going to that extraordinary thing again. That is illogical. It doesn't make sense, but it is what we're called to do because we're following Jesus. It's the love of Jesus Christ, the love of Jesus Christ himself, who goes to the cross in suffering and obedience. It is the cross. What is unique in Christianity is the cross, which allows Christians to step beyond the world in order to receive victory over the world. The Passio, or the Passion, in the love of the crucified one, is the extraordinary mark of Christian existence. So, so now, in some ways, Bonhoeffer shifted from, you know, doing this for the love of Christ, Christ as the object, to, we're called to this extraordinary thing. Um, that is really beyond us. It's beyond what we currently see and can conceive, but that is what is Christian. Christians are extraordinary. Christians do the extraordinary things. This extraordinary, extravagant, naive love. This idea that we can be fully committed to Jesus. This belief that that love really is powerful. That in praying for our enemies, in serving our enemies, in reaching out in love to our enemies, that will actually change them. That will actually have some effect. Maybe it won't stop them from doing what they intend to do to us, but it will ultimately change the scenario and the equation. Yeah, that's what Bonhoeffer is ultimately getting at. It's not in ethical rigor, it says in the middle 115, nor in the eccentricity of Christian ways of life, but in the simplicity of Christian obedience to the will of Jesus, that we are able to do this extraordinary thing of loving enemies, of praying for those who would curse us, of wanting the best for those who would use us. Um, you know, so Bonhoeffer again is really pushing the envelope of what it is that we're called to do. He says, "What are you doing that is special? The extraordinary, and that is what is the most offensive, is a deed the disciples do. It has to be done, like the better righteousness, and done visibly, not in ethical rigor, not in the eccentricity of Christian ways of life, but in the simplicity of Christian obedience to the will of Jesus. This deed will prove to be what is special by leading Christians to the passio, passion of Christ. Such action itself is continuous suffering. It is this action Christ in his disciples, in this action, Christ is his disciples' passion or passio. If it is not that, then this is not the deed which Jesus intends." So again, for Bonhoeffer, you know, we are joining our lives to that of Christ. Jesus went through the passion. The passion was a necessary thing for us to realize the power of love. Um, and, and if Jesus didn't go through that, or if we are not willing to go through that, then we're not able to do these extraordinary things that we're expecting to do. And ultimately, again, in this context for Bonhoeffer, we're not able to stand up and then ultimately defeat the evil that is around us. It's just not possible. Um, we are unable, on our own power, trying to kind of navigate it logically, to do this extraordinary work that is necessary of us in order, even beyond the scourge and the evil of Nazism, or whatever the specter is that besets us or haunts us. Even beyond that, this love of Jesus, this extraordinary love that is acted out, lived out in real time in the lives of people, in the situations and the eras in which we live. That extraordinary type of love is only we only have the ability to live that, to do that, to show that through our focus on Jesus, that then taps us into the power of God. And again, for Bonhoeffer, in his particular setting, in the historical moment in which he was, this was the only thing, at least at this time in his life, that he could figure out, that was going to be necessary to combat the evil of the Nazi movement and empire. Um, and maybe likewise, as we're up against a pretty big evil, insurmountable odds, the power of a large and well-resourced government. uh, what is it that we can do? What resources do we have at our disposal? Again, Bonhoeffer, is saying to us that, even if, the particulars don't match up exactly, and the reality is that, we still have access to the same powerful love that gave Jesus the ability to overcome the death that and, and the persecution um, that he endured on his way to the cross, through the tomb, and then to resurrection and ascension. So, um, with that, we're probably going to have to stop here. Um, I will be going on vacation next week, so we'll take a break until September. Um, and so, we have an opportunity to kind of catch up if you haven't. Um, we'll still be, obviously, when we come back, we'll still be finishing up the Sermon on the Mount, or but even in this next section, we're going off of chapter 5 into chapter 6, um, on the hidden nature of the Christian life, or hidden righteousness. And so we'll continue from there. Again, if you want to read through the rest of the book over the next month, and then just refer back to notes as we go through the rest of the book, starting in September, you can, or you can just take a break and read something else, or or not read this. Uh, Take this off of your reading list for the next few weeks, and pick it back up when we start back up in September. So thank you for wrestling with this, for hanging in there with it sometimes, it seems like, Bonhoeffer is just, hoping against hope writing this, but there are some things that we can glean and apply even to our own situation now. So like I said, thank you for your time, for your attention. It's 7:57, so we have about 3 minutes until our service of Compline. So we look forward to gathering again for this particular discussion of discipleship in the month of September. So do have a good month of August. See you all again over the next couple of days, but then on next week we won't meet then for the next few weeks. All right. Thank you all. And Compline will begin shortly.